Athens, a city of passion and philosophy, and at its heart, a museum with secrets dark and strange. Ancient high technology, sacred transcendental visions, a scourge of the seas, and a descent into the lair of a monster. Secrets hidden in plain sight, inside the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. The legacy of the Athenians is literally rock solid, proclaimed by the ancient limestone of the Acropolis. The world would be a very different place without Athens' contribution to philosophy, drama, and democracy. But in 480 BC, this legacy was nearly erased. The Persian Empire set out to destroy the city. And this, too, is written in stone. The inscription is lengthy, but the gist is simple. Abandon the city, women and children flee, all men to the oars. It speaks of fear and also of Athens' secret weapon. The tablet is known as the Decree of Themistocles.
Themistocles, I think, is the most interesting person in Greek history, and probably the most far-sighted.
Themistocles realized that the Persian Empire was eager to capture Greece. They had tried before, and he was sure they would try again. Unlike Persia, Athens was a democracy. In the public forum, Themistocles advocated for a new weapon.
He was a fairly skillful politician, but he was definitely a statesman in terms of building up Athens with the fleet.
Themistocles convinced his fellow citizens to pay for 200 warships, just like this full-size replica. The design is called a trireme, named for its 3 banks of oars. They power the trireme's primary weapon, a bronze-tipped battering ram. Themistocles suspected the fleet would have to be built quickly. The Persian king Xerxes was determined to defeat the stubborn city-states.
So they amassed this huge army and a fleet to go with it. Most of the Greek city-states had already either given up and gone over to the Persian side, or just submitted in every way they could.
When the Persians attacked at Thermopylae, a few brave Greeks, led by the Spartans, dared to face them. The museum has arrows from this famous battle, which cut down the Spartan soldiers to the last man. When Xerxes marched into Athens, he set the city alight. But thanks to Themistocles' decree, the people were gone. The Greek leaders now argued about what to do next.
The leader of Sparta says to Themistocles, "You don't have the right to talk. You don't have a city anymore. Look, Athens is burning." And Themistocles said, "But I have 200 ships. And those ships are going to give me back Athens, our city."
The 200 triremes were ready for battle. But would they be a match for 1,000 Persian warships? Themistocles needed to even the odds. In the sea south of Athens, there is a narrow passage of water called the Strait of Salamis. A tight squeeze for the Persian fleet, but a potential opportunity for the Athenians. Themistocles sent an agent to Xerxes' camp with orders to lie to the Persian king, claiming that the Greek navy was about to escape through the Strait of Salamis. Xerxes took the bait. At sunrise, the legendary battle began.
Where we are standing, Xerxes, the king of kings, the ruler of Persia, was following the battle. You have 250,000 men on about 1,000 ships. So it's an enormous battle. When the Persian ships started maneuvering, they were so large that one started colliding with the next. At no moment could the Persians use all their ships.
The Persians sailed through the Strait of Salamis, right where the Athenians wanted them.
The Greek triremes were smaller than the Persians, but they were faster and had a better maneuverability.
You may think that Athens' secret weapon was the trireme's battering ram. But battering rams are only as powerful as the muscle behind them. This trireme replica has a theoretical top speed of 9 knots. That's the velocity required to break through a thick wooden hull. The Greeks will lose the battle if they can't reach ramming speed.
The Greek rowers were free men. They look towards the southeast and they see their town burning. Those are free citizens who are fighting for their homes.
We know the free Athenians rowed well enough because history records a defeat that cost the Persians dearly. The battered Persian fleet sailed away, never to return. And King Xerxes beat a hasty retreat, his empire put to shame by a democratic city. Athens' legacy would live on. Her secret weapon was freedom. And what of Themistocles? Hailed as a hero, a few years later, many feared his growing influence. Some even plotted against him.
The Athenians had a system whereby they not only allotted or elected officials, but they could unelect them. And they had a yearly opportunity to get rid of somebody. And they brought with them an ostrakon, which is the Greek word for a broken piece of pottery. And on that broken piece of pottery, they scratched the name of the person they thought was a problem. And the man with the most votes lost. And he was exiled for 10 years. And that was thought to calm down any anti-democratic leanings he might have.
Themistocles' fate would be decided by a free vote. Free, but not necessarily fair. Recently, researchers discovered that on all of these ostraca, the name Themistocles is written in the same hand. The vote was rigged.
It's either discouraging or encouraging to know that dirty politics go right back to 5th century Athens. And it's kind of the equivalent of the hanging chads in Florida that helped George Bush get elected.
When the votes were counted, Themistocles was banished from the very city he had saved. Even a democracy strong enough to defeat an empire can be tarnished by those who would subvert it from within. Next on Museum Secrets, the man behind the golden mask. When one enters the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, the first challenge is separating legend and reality. This is the statue of a real man, while this woman never was. Sometimes it's easy to spot a myth, and sometimes not so much. And then there is this delicately tooled face of the finest gold. Where he fits on the scale from legend to real is a museum secret. For the moment, we'll call him what the museum calls him, the Mask of Agamemnon. 3,000 years ago, the poet Homer wrote of Agamemnon in his saga of the Trojan War. After the Trojans are fooled by a gift horse filled with Greek soldiers, King Agamemnon leads the Greeks to a glorious and bloody victory. But by the 19th century, most scholars agreed that Homer's tales were fiction. One of the few dissenters was a German businessman and amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann.
He believed firmly in Homer, and then he pursued his dream to uncover the world of the Homeric epics.
Schliemann predicted the real city of Troy would be found in Turkey. He was right. His discovery astounded the world. But as he dug deep for Trojan artifacts, he destroyed more recent layers. Archaeologists were horrified. Then he made off with Trojan gold, after using it to dress his wife up as Helen of Troy.
In February 1874, Schliemann actually proceeded to use the same illegal stratagem that he had used at Troy in 1870. That is, without notifying the Greek authorities, he came out to Mycenae, allegedly for a survey, but truly, in reality, to excavate.
Schliemann went to Mycenae to prove that the hero of the Trojan War was just as real as Troy itself. Mycenae is where Homer said King Agamemnon ruled.
We're now approaching the main gate of the citadel of Mycenae, built in the middle of the 13th century. It's one of the few landmarks that remained standing throughout Mycenae's history and became its trademark, of course.
Within sight of the famous gate, in a Mycenaean graveyard, Schliemann believed he would find the remains of Agamemnon.
So now we're inside grave circle A, the grave circle that Schliemann discovered in 1876. All the shaft graves were maximum depth, about 4 meters. They built the burial chamber at the bottom of this shaft, and in some cases then they would post a funeral stele to mark the spot.
These grave markers, now in the museum, hinted at treasure underground. Schliemann began to dig.
Whenever he saw a later wall, then, he just demolished it, as he did at Troy. He demolished it and went down to the prehistoric levels, if he recognized them.
Horrified by Schliemann's methods, the Greek government assigned him a minder named Panagiotis Stamatakis.
Stamatakis, of course, who had different instructions and came from a different school of archaeology, or from a school of archaeology full stop, tried to oppose that. And next morning, he would arrive at the site, and the wall, or the building, gone. Stamatakis had to accept insult upon insult. Schliemann treated the man with utter contempt. He described him as an insignificant boor government clerk who was bent on impeding Mr. Schliemann's pioneering researches for the greater glory of Greece.
Before long, as at Troy, Schliemann's unorthodox methods produced stunning results.
There is the bull's head wrought in silver and plated with gold. There is the golden lion heads, golden masks, precious rings and objects, one after the other.
Then Schliemann announced he had found the death mask of Agamemnon. Not an artist's depiction of a legend, but the real face of a real man.
In ecstasy, he said, he lifted the gold mask and kissed it.
Schliemann received acclaim for proving Homer's Agamemnon was fact, not fiction. The mask took pride of place at the museum amid other treasures of Mycenae. But for some modern scholars, the mask of Agamemnon has become the focal point of doubt. They ask, why does it look so different from the other masks? Why is it the only mask with facial hair? And some noticed that the mustache resembles a style popular among Schliemann's contemporaries, 19th century Germans. Scholarly papers began to use words like fraud. But then, as the reality scale tipped from real to legend to fake, a researcher discovered the unpublished diaries of Schliemann's minder, Panagiotis Stamatakis. A man with no reason to bolster Schliemann's reputation, he says he watched as Schliemann unearthed a mask of gold more beautiful than all the others.
Stamatakis' diaries offer us an eyewitness, which we don't have until now. We know now that he was there, he saw the mask, and he described it. So there is no way that this is a forgery.
Today, researchers believe the mask is actually 300 years too old to belong to Agamemnon. With his reckless methods, Schliemann had dug up the wrong king. But that's not the end of the story. This is Schliemann's home in Athens. It's decorated with the symbol that has become synonymous with evil. The swastika is an ancient design that Schliemann noticed on artifacts he found in Troy. After his discovery, some influential Germans came to believe that the Trojans were a white race that was the source of the German bloodline. Homer's legend of the Trojan War became mixed up with bits of history. It was through Schliemann that the swastika made its way to the National Socialist Party. And his belief that Agamemnon was a real man who led his people to victory became part of the Nazi mythology. And so our tale ends with a caution. Bad things can happen when legends are tangled up with history. Up next, the secret of the labyrinth. Some of the treasures in the National Archaeological Museum are best seen at night. In the dark, one may discover terrifying creatures, like this one. Half man, half bull, all monster. This is the original genetically modified supervillain, the Minotaur. He lurked in a dark labyrinth below the palace of King Minos. All who tried to slay him got lost in the maze. The Minotaur vanquished them and consigned them to the pit of his stomach. But then came a hero named Theseus, whose clever girlfriend Ariadne made him bring along a ball of thread. Theseus killed the Minotaur and followed the thread back into the light. Of course, the Minotaur and his labyrinth are just a dark fantasy. Or are they? In 1900, on the island of Crete, archaeologists unearthed this vast ruin. This complex maze of passageways reveals an ancient culture with a fascination for bulls.
When the Minoan civilization was uncovered, one of the things they did find were scenes of an elaborate form of bullfighting, where acrobats, young men and women, would taunt and jump over the back of a charging bull. And I don't know if you've ever seen a Portuguese bullfight, but that's how they used to do it in Portugal as well.
Amid the ruins, archaeologists also found evidence of a religious cult that worshipped bulls as a powerful deity. So while Minoans baited bulls, they also feared them. We know now that the ruin is a palace, not a maze, but it certainly looks like one.
It was so complex and so big, particularly for that time in this part of the world, that it may have given rise to the concept, the idea of the labyrinth.
Certain ancient maps pinpoint a labyrinth just 60 kilometers away. And if you think it might be worth finding out if the labyrinth is really here, you're not alone.
The labyrinth goes back a long way. It goes back to basically almost before Greek sources.
Archaeologist Sandy McGilvray intends to find the labyrinth and unlock its secrets. McGilvray has made contact with a man who claims to know just what he's looking for.
Hello, Michel.
Local guide Michel Fournier.
Bonjour. Tu parles français?
Oui, oui.
At the beginning, it was natural, and afterwards, it was used as a quarry. This is what is now the labyrinth. This place is a new one. It has been built by the Germans.
In World War II, when the Nazis occupied Crete, they enlarged the natural cave system to store munitions.
In '62, 4 young people from the Messara went inside to take some bombs. But they made an explosion inside and they died inside, in this place. So as you see,
Today, with the permission of the Greek Ministry of Culture, McGillivray plans to enter the deadly caves. He is the first archaeologist to do so in more than 50 years.
Oh, this is the entrance here.
So this is the entrance.
The way in was once much larger, but the Nazis sealed the entrance with explosives before their retreat.
Here we are.
Like the legendary Theseus, McGillivray and his guide descend into the labyrinth without a map. The stability of the tunnel is unknown.
Oh my God, this is wild.
Unlike Theseus, McGillivray didn't bring a ball of Ariadne's thread, but he will feel the presence of a monster just the same.
What?
In these places where the Germans were stocking the munitions, and we have still some bombs here.
That's insane.
How many of these Nazi shells are live? McGillivray and his guide don't stick around to find out. They venture deeper into the labyrinth, where their lights reveal this. Threads on the tunnel floor. Recently, someone else has been down here, recreating the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. Why would anyone, other than an archaeologist, risk his life to come here?
We are in the room which is called Trapeza. It is the end of the labyrinth. Many people come now to pray. They say, here in this place, there is a strange energy. There are many inscriptions on the walls from different moments of the history. You have here some swastika from the Germany. But you have also some things which are from the Middle Ages.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know exactly what it is at the moment. We
It's
need
like a coat of arms.
Yes, yes. But this is your work. You have to help everybody to understand.
That could be a crusader shield. It's kind of a metaphorical thing, the labyrinth. The labyrinth is a place where you go in, encounter some kind of half divine, half human aspect, defeat it or not, and emerge victorious or not.
There are here, in my mind,
Right.
the roots of humanity. Because everybody doesn't know it, but everybody is in a labyrinth, in his labyrinth, and he has to find the way out.
And before we do, we must all enter the darkness to brave our own monsters. Up next, the secret of stopping an arrow. The National Archaeological Museum of Athens has no shortage of heroes, but only one of these tough guys took on the entire world. Alexander the Great. In the 4th century BC, he inspired fear in his enemies. In his legions, he inspired loyalty. In graduate student Scott Bartell, he inspired something else.
I was and still am obsessed with Alexander the Great. Just, anything about him, I wanted to know about it. There's this very famous mosaic that was found in Pompeii of Alexander on his horse wearing this certain type of armor. And it wanted one. You know, I wanted what Alexander wore. And so, you know, I just started looking into it, you know, looking into every possible source that I could find, you know, from very amateur historians to the well-known ones.
Hollywood epics depict Greek warriors wearing armor of bronze, including this hunky Alexander. But when Scott and his professor Greg Aldrate probed deeper, they uncovered something quite different.
People referred to it either as the linothorax or just simply linen armor.
Alexander wore armor made of linen? That just sounds wrong. And if the ancients did have some kind of linen armor, why isn't it in the museum?
We have about 750 images of this armor in art, but the problem is none of them have survived till today because they're made of linen.
So most of the available evidence is from images like this one on a tombstone of a Greek soldier. His armor looks like it might be made of cloth, but that doesn't prove anything. Scott and Greg wanted to find out if linen armor would really work. They started by sourcing the same raw, unprocessed flax that weavers used in Alexander's time.
This is a drop spindle that I've got attached to some flax, and I am spinning this into thread. This is what the ancient Greeks would have used. So we wanted to sort of replicate all of the ancient practices to get the most authentic linen that we could get.
The team wove thread into cloth. They were well aware that one layer would afford no protection. What about many layers glued together? The ancient Greeks might have thought of that. But did they have a glue that would do the job?
For glues, we eventually settled on two types of glue that everybody in the ancient world would have had access to. One made out of rabbit skins, rabbits are everywhere, and one made out of flax seeds. And we're gonna lay the other layer on top and press them. Built up layers by laminating them together, so by gluing them together. And that's what forms armor.
They made bronze arrowheads too, of the precise weight and dimensions employed by Alexander's legions and his adversaries. Today, Greg and Scott and some fellow students will take the armor and arrows out of the lab. In a few moments, they'll know whether their theory is sound or has holes in it.
What we're setting up here is we have a test patch of our laminated layers of linen. And fortunately, the laws of physics are the same now as they were 2,000 years ago. So if we shoot an arrow with a certain force at something, at a certain material, we know it'll go through or it won't. That's a good hit. Let's measure it. All right. We actually had no idea. We had the same doubts as a lot of people that, you know, would fabric really protect you from a serious arrow attack? And we were quite surprised. All right. So with this one, depth of penetration there, not that much. Trick to the linothorax is when an arrow hits it, because it's fabric, because it's a little bit soft, the whole thing flexes. And so the entire surface of the armor absorbs the energy of that incoming arrow.
For comparison, they will fire several arrows at a sheet of bronze the same thickness as this ancient metal breastplate. The team assumes the arrow will bounce off the bronze. The result is shocking. In repeated tests, the arrow goes right through.
The difference is that the linen suit of armor would have only weighed 1/3 the weight of the bronze armor. Nobody wants to wear bronze armor in the hot Mediterranean sun. It bakes you, whereas linen stays cool.
At Scott's insistence, there will be one final test. In addition to the test patches, he has constructed a complete linen breastplate. And if you think the vivid colors are creative license, they're not. On this soldier's tombstone, ultraviolet light reveals that bright colors were all the rage in ancient armor. We're not sure if Scott is putting on a helmet for extra protection or because of his obsession with Alexander the Great. It may be a little of both. Greg takes aim at Scott from point-blank range.
How does that feel?
I didn't feel anything. How far did it go in?
Enough.
Enough? That was half?
Yeah. And so we know that Alexander himself, I mean, one of the greatest conquerors of the entire ancient world, chose to wear this sort of armor.
It was highly effective. It would stop pretty much any arrow attack that you would encounter on an ancient battlefield.
So Hollywood warriors may look great in bronze, but they wouldn't last long on a real battlefield.
By physically making something, having it in 3 dimensions, to feel its weight, to experience how it moves, can tell you information that maybe is lacking in the ancient sources.
You can run faster, you can run for greater distances, sneak up on the enemy. And this is, sort of one of his greatest strengths, is that he just surprises his enemy. So they think he's gonna arrive, in a week, and he gets there in 3 days.
I'm tempted to think that this kind of armor does partly at least explain his success.
I never really doubted it. I always had confidence in it. I thought if Alexander wore it, he certainly knew something about warfare. This stuff had to work out.
And that's why history's greatest tough guy trusted linen with his life. Up next, a secret to kill for. The ancient Athenians cared so much about our next museum secret, they slaughtered innocents to protect it. It is a secret lost to history, and yet there are still a few remaining shards of truth waiting to be put together. This restored tablet is just one piece of a larger puzzle. It shows men and women with torches and vessels on their way out of Athens to the religious sanctuary of Eleusis. Every year for 1,000 years, Athenians came here to take part in a celebration.
The celebrators would come here and gather in this courtyard. They would have performed dances along the way.
We know that Plato danced here, and Pythagoras, along with a who's who of ancient Greece.
You can see here where the natural bedrock was carved away in order to accommodate lots and lots of visitors. It's here that we can begin to think about what actually happened when people were initiated.
The initiation was the secret part of the Eleusinian mysteries. You either participated fully, or you didn't come near.
We know, for example, of 2 teenagers who were caught trying to spy on the ceremony, and they were punished as a result by being thrown off of a cliff.
What went on here? What was so important that Athenians were willing to kill to keep the secret? Some believe the mysteries involved dark rituals. Some whisper of orgies. But little is known for certain except this. Priests gave the initiates a kind of mead called kykion.
Kyonας είναι πρακτικά το κέλυφος για όλο το μυστήριο των Ελευσινίων μυστηρίων.
Neurologist Dimitris Kontouris believes kykion was made with a local strain of barley, which can be infected by a fungus called ergot. Ergot is a natural psychedelic, a precursor of LSD.
Η διαδικασία είναι πάρα πολύ παλιά σε ό,τι αφορά την ερώτησή σας. Δεν τη βρήκανε οι Έλληνες. Υπάρχουν και σε άλλες κοινωνίες.
Local people today still make a beer with hallucinogenic properties. The doctor conducts research to test their brain patterns and record their experiences.
Και τα αποτελέσματα δείχνουν ότι οι περιγραφόμενες καταστάσεις των ελευσινίων μυστηρίων και η έκσταση που ζούσαν οι άνθρωποι.
Initiates claimed they experienced fear, followed by elation, and then lost their fear of death. But could a simple drink be the cause? Today, in the rainforests of Peru, shamans and their acolytes drink another plant-based psychedelic called ayahuasca, the vine of the soul. The drink takes seekers on a journey that can include frightening sensations. For others, feelings of overwhelming joy. Through closed eyes, many report visions of a divine mystery. The shamans value ayahuasca the way the Athenians valued kykeon.
Ο κικαίωνας ούτε φάρμακο, ούτε θεωρείται, ας το πούμε, ναρκωτικό με τη σημερινή ορολογία. Θεωρείται ένα δώρο των θεών.
But under the influence of kykeon, did the Greeks close their eyes and see their gods? In the darkness of the sanctuary, did they see anything at all? This stone depicts the experience of a blind initiate, the light that filled his mind during the Eleusinian mysteries. Did Greek philosophers and mathematicians make breakthroughs simply because they were smart? Or did they learn to think outside the box with the help of the Eleusinian mysteries? A state-sanctioned, mind-blowing experience. Up next, the secrets of ancient high technology. Our final museum secret begins not with an historic conqueror or a legendary king, but with a deep-sea dive in 1901, near the island of Antikythera in the Aegean Sea.
One of them dived down, probably to look for sponges, and came up within a few minutes, absolutely terrified, the story goes, gabbling that he'd seen a huge pile of dead naked women on the seabed. So the captain of the boat goes down himself and realizes that these aren't naked women, it's a pile of statues.
They can be seen in the museum today, bronzes of men and women and marble deities corroded by the sea. Researchers believe the statues were on a cargo ship that sank in the 1st century BC, tribute to a Roman emperor from his vassal states, which then included Greece. Along with the exquisite statuary, the divers recovered this. Its corrosion clings tight, obscuring form and purpose. The secret is, what is it?
It's been under the sea for 2,000 years and it shows. It's corroded, you've got all of these sort of layers of limestone that have built up on it. Inside, it's like the inside of a clock or a watch. You see these very modern-looking gear wheels with their pointed teeth. You can see tiny letters of ancient Greek inscribed on it, sort of cramped lines of lettering, pointers, things that should not have been on something from ancient Greece.
Many historians believed the Greeks lacked the machines to make it. Some people thought its origins must be extraterrestrial. The enigmatic artifact was named the Antikythera mechanism. One man took practical steps to find out what it was and how it worked. Michael Wright was a curator at the Science Museum in London. To better understand the mechanism, he decided to build an exact model. The work would consume him for the next 40 years. In 1987, he was allowed to X-ray the original. He captured images of discrete slices that revealed details never seen before.
It's very small to contain as much detail as it does. And the more you look at it, the more detail you see in it. You can even see the maker's setting out marks in places. It's almost as though you can see his fingerprints on it. There is relatively little difference between the hand tools of the present day and the hand tools that survive from Hellenistic times. The part that everybody wonders about is the cutting of gear teeth. People seem to imagine that making a gear wheel must involve some sort of clever machinery, but it's not true. I just use a file to cut the teeth. The gear wheels produced that way are perceptibly less even than gear wheels cut by machine, but they're good enough.
Wright duplicated every surviving cog and gear, then used them to extrapolate the missing parts. After years of effort, he created a complete working replica.
We know the form of the dial plate itself because we've got this quarter of it, roughly, with an inner ring marked into 360 degrees for the zodiac. You see how the phase of the moon changes. I say this instrument was essentially a portable planetarium.
Well, the heavens would have been incredibly important to anybody living in ancient times. We look at clockwork and think, you know, we can make clocks, or we can make steam engines, we can build things to do work. That's the way we think about technology. But for the Greeks, it was much more about knowledge, about wonder, about getting closer to the gods.
Watching the sky night after night, the Greeks noticed that the planets sometimes slowed down and even moved backwards. With their Earth-centered view of the universe, they explained these motions as circles within circles.
I've got pointers for the 5 planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn as well. When the sun comes opposite the planet, in this case Mars, the planet should go retrograde. Mars is going forward still at the moment. The sun comes around, Mars has stopped. That's what we call first station. Then it goes backwards. Retrograde motion.
The mechanism's interlocking cogs predict the motions of the planets with near perfect accuracy. And its predictive power doesn't stop there. On the back plate of the mechanism, a double spiral provides accurate predictions of the eclipses of sun and moon. An ancient mechanism pulled from the deep reveals the depth of early Greek technology.
It does make a difference to our perception of the civilization of that time. And I'm very happy that we have that better insight.
Even though the Greeks did not discover the true map of the solar system, their Antikythera mechanism makes accurate predictions anyway. Surely this is a testament to a brilliant civilization. Even when they had it wrong, they got it right.
I think what the Antikythera mechanism tells us is how much we don't know about the ancient world. And it just makes you wonder, what else is there? You know, what else is languishing in a shipwreck at the bottom of the sea?
For every mystery we reveal, far more must remain unspoken. Secrets of the human spirit and of the human heart. Hidden in plain sight at the National Archaeological Museum of Athens.